Hey guys, this is Dr. Hub. Whether you're in medicine, from specialty to super specialty, allied sciences, or simply curious, this focus content it delivers the key points you need to know. Now let us classify the lipids. So first is the lipids are classified into the simple. So let's look at simple. So under simple, it is again divided into fat. Next is it is divided into wax. So this is about simple. Next, compound. So what is happening in compound? So in compound there is lipoprotein, next is the glycolipid, so this glycolipid it has the cerebrocytes as well as the gangliosides. So let's recap till here. So we discussed about the classification of lipids. So under lipids we saw the simple, there is a compound as well as there is derived. So first will be the simple which we discussed. So simple we saw there was fat as well as wax. Now coming towards the compound. So under this compound there is lipoprotein is one category. Second category was the glycolipid. So glycolipids contain the cerebrocytes as well as the presence of the gangliosides. Now moving further, the compound it also has another part, that is a phospholipid. So this phospholipid it comes under the compounds. So one was lipoprotein, one was glycolipids. This is the phospholipid. So phospholipid it contains lecithin. There is also presence of the cephalin. Next will be the plasmalogen. And the sphingomyelin. So lecithin, cephalin, plasmalogen and the sphingomyelin. So this was about the compound. So compound, the lipoprotein, glycolipid and the phospholipid, these are the categories. Next we move on to the derived. So under derived it includes various components such as there are some categories such as hormones. Next there is also the fat soluble vitamins. So fat soluble vitamins as well as the micronutrients. Next will be the steroids, the carotenoids as well as the alcohol. And the next will be the fatty acids. So now let's recap. So we discussed the classification of lipids as simple, compound and the derived. So simple we saw the fat and the wax, and now looking at the compound we saw the lipoprotein. Next was the glycolipid. Glycolipid had cerebrocytes as well as the gangliosides. Then we also spoke about the phospholipid containing lecithin, cephalin, plasmalogen and the sphingomyelin. Now moving on to the derived, we saw the hormones, fat soluble vitamins, micronutrients, steroids, carotenoids as well as alcohol and the fatty acids. Now let's look at fatty acids. So fatty acids are again classified into a lot of categories. So this fatty acids it contains saturated. So under the saturated fatty acids it includes the palmitic acid. So, saturated fatty acid, it includes palmitic acid. Next, let us look at the unsaturated as well. So, unsaturated fatty acids, there is a monosaturated, so what happens in monounsaturated? It includes the omega 9, the omega 9 as well as the oleic acid. Next, it also includes the helladic acid. So, monounsaturated, it includes the monounsaturated, it includes omega 9, oleic acid and the helladic acid. Next, moving on to the polyunsaturated. Before polyunsaturated, let us quickly finish the eicosanoids. So, eicosanoids also is a category of the unsaturated fatty acids. So, eicosanoids, it includes the prostanoids, next will be the leukotrienes and the lipoxins. So, we discussed, to recap, we discussed the fatty acids. Fatty acid comes under the class of the derived lipids. So, fatty acids, we saw the saturated. The saturated type, it included the palmitic acid, and the unsaturated, it included the monounsaturated. Under monounsaturated, we saw the omega 9. Next, we also saw the oleic acid and also the helladic acid. Now, moving on to the eicosanoids. The eicosanoids, it contains the prostanoids. There is also the leukotrienes. Next, there is a lipoxins as well. Lastly, we will move on to the class of the polyunsaturated. So, under the polyunsaturated, there is omega 3 and omega 6. So, under this omega 3, it includes the isopentanoic acid. Next is a docosa hexanoic acid. Then comes the linoleic acid. So, omega 3 icopentanoic acid, docosa hexanoic acid as well as linoleic acid. So, next we look at the omega 6. So, omega 6, there is the linoleic acid. So, the one in omega 3 was linoleic acid, here is linoleic acid. Next is the gamma linoleic acid as well as the arachidonic acid. So, this was about the classification of lipids. So, quickly recapping, let us look at the skeletal. So, lipids are classified into simple, compound and the derived. So, under simple there was fat and the wax. So, it was fat and the wax under the lipids, under the simple. So, compound we had the phospholipid, glycolipid as well as a lipoprotein. Then looking at derived, we also further reclassified into fatty acids, alcohol, the carotenoids, steroids as well as the fatty soluble vitamins and the hormones. So, under the fatty acid we further went on to classify it as saturated and unsaturated. So, under unsaturated there was monounsaturated, polyunsaturated as well as the eicosanoids.